Muscle cars. Everybody thought they were a dying breed of an automotive vehicle. Ford didn't think so. They kept the Mustang around for years and they never discontinued it, while Chevy and Dodge discontinued theirs. Well, 2008 marked the start of the year where American car manufacturers started bringing back these cars, as Dodge brought back its iconic Challenger. Now, a lot of you will remember this vehicle from the 1970s, specifically the 1970 to 1974 model. Now today, I actually think this is probably one of the most retro modern cars on the road today. It's quite striking to see it in person. It just grabs way more attention than you would get from any Mustang that you could buy, except maybe a Shelby. So let's take a look and see if Dodge has included the performance with this retro modern look today. Now, today's muscle cars are definitely quite different from the muscle cars that you remember back 30 to 40 years ago, and there's differentiation enough to bring them into the 21st century. Now, Dodge actually hasn't given us a muscle car for quite a few years now. Like I said, 2008 was the first year that they brought this Challenger nameplate back. Underneath the body, you'll actually find Chrysler's LX platform. It underpins the Dodge Charger, the Chrysler 300, the Dodge Magnum, which is now deceased. Now, what you immediately notice about the Challenger is it is definitely the most in-your-face and retro modern look of the three muscle cars, which is the Ford Mustang, the Chevrolet Camaro, and then of course there's the Korean version, which is the Hyundai Genesis Coupe. Now, the Challenger was, when it first introduced in 2008, was actually only available in one model. It was the SRT8 performance model. Later in the year, Dodge brought us the RT model that just had the standard 5.7. What you're looking at is a 2010 Dodge Challenger RT. You can tell it's an RT from the Hemi badges on the hood, on those fake Ram air scoops, which aren't real. But the front of the car is definitely where this vehicle looks the most menacing. It just looks completely retro modern. I can't stress that enough. And when you see the vehicle in person, it's just completely different when you see it in pictures. Now, the Challenger is available now in three trims. There's the base SE, which comes with the V6. For 2020, it was the paltry 3.5. There's the RT, the mid-level, which is this model, which comes with the 5.7. And then there's the SRT8 that still has the 6.1 liter V8. In 2011, Dodge did update the V6 with their corporate Pentastar 3.6. And then in 2011 as well, they also introduced a larger 6.4 liter V8 for the SRT8 model. Now, you can distinguish an RT on the outside, not just from the Hemi badge, but you also get the nice rectangular dual exhausts. You get 18-inch wheels. This one has the optional 20-inch chrome wheels, which, while I hate chrome, they actually do fill out the wheel wells nicely. You also get fog lights on the RT, some different trim, and a sport-tuned suspension, as well as leather-wrapped steering wheel on the inside. You can see this one also has some kind of, retro-looking fuel door. I believe it's probably an option package. To me, it's just too much. It's too flashy for me, but some people might like this. It does match the chrome wheels pretty nicely. Now, coming inside, this does not have Chrysler's Smart Key access system. You just have their standard old-school Mercedes-style key. And the one thing I don't like about the Challenger are these flimsy little door handles. When you're pulling on the door handles, I slipped off of them several times because the doors are quite heavy and they feel kind of cheap. I hope they change the door handles pretty soon. Now, stepping inside, you do have a black leather interior with this RT model. And the Challenger, what it gives you is definitely roominess. Now, stepping inside, you do have to duck your head still, but not as bad as a Camaro, which is god-awful, and then the Mustang. Now, coming inside, what you get is a feeling of roominess with the Challenger. You can see this is their older key. You can essentially, there's no push-button start. You have to stick the key in this ignition right here, which is actually kind of weird looking, but you do have the white face gauges, and then it's got a relatively low 5,800 RPM redline. Whew. But man, does that 5.7 Hemi sound really, really good. Now, shutting the door, both of the windows are automatic down. However, they are not auto up, only automatic down. Now, the rest of the interior in here is definitely older Chrysler, Dodge materials. Surprisingly, you do get a soft touch dash, but the graining does feel a little bit on the cheap side. but at least it's nice that it's soft touch. You have some Challenger badges. One thing though, the interior of this vehicle does not match the exterior. It just looks very kind of boring in here. You do have this nicer carbon fiber look. It's definitely fake. This one does come with a 5-speed automatic transmission with a manual shift mode, no paddle shifters, which was added in 2012. You could get this car with a 6-speed manual. You can see this one also has your navigation system. It's a touchscreen navigation system. It's not Chrysler's newest navigation system, but it gets the job done. It's pretty responsive in terms of its touchscreen response. But in terms of, you know, the map resolution and whatnot, it's a little bit old school, but it gets the job done, and it's nice that they put this kind of tech features in this vehicle. You do not get dual zone automatic climate control. You can see it's just a single manual zone, but they do give you a 2-level heated seat. Now, coming to the steering wheel, it's a really ugly steering wheel in my eyes. It doesn't befit of this performance, you know, muscle car to me. It's a really large diameter. It's nicely leather stitched, but there's no bolstering extensions. Somewhat of a thick rim. Coming to the door panels, they are soft touch, but again, somewhat of a cheaper graining material. And you do have perforated leather down here, and it's soft touch where your elbows are going to rest. And then there's a little bit of storage down there. Now, coming to the center console right here, you have a power outlet, but no auxiliary USB. The aux port is right here. And then coming to the glove box, it is damped, but somewhat of a smaller size. And I don't see a USB in here. It could be somewhere else though. Now, coming into the rear seat of the Challenger requires you to come to the driver's side and then pull on this lever right here. The seat will kind of tumble forward and slide out of the way. And coming back here, out of the 3 muscle cars, the Challenger is definitely the largest in terms of rear seat space. It's got a very long body, wide body. You can see the headroom here is actually pretty good. The comfort back here is surprising. It's because of that wide body, you could put 3 across here, but I would still recommend it for 2. There is some map pocket storage right there. The material is actually soft touch right here. They leather stitched that. It's hard plastic up here, but overall, if you want a muscle car and you have to carry passengers, the Challenger is the best one. You can even see it's got rear seat vents back here, so that's surprisingly nice. Now, coming to its ginormous trunk, ginormous being a relative term, it looks huge on the outside, but in terms of space, it goes in somewhat deep. It's got a nice 60-40 split, but the opening is somewhat on the smaller side, and the liftover is pretty high up from the shape. But overall, this is still a much better trunk than the paltry Camaro and the smaller Mustang. Now, underneath the hood, you'll find Chrysler's corporate 5.7-liter Hemi V8. You can see the previous owner has upgraded the exhaust to a Corsa exhaust system and added a K&N cold air intake. Well, it's not really cold air, it's kind of a short ram air. Here are the numbers: 372 horsepower with the automatic, 376 if you get the manual, and 400 foot-pounds of torque with the automatic, or 410 with the manual. This vehicle weighs about 4,200 pounds, and 0 to 60 times are about just under 6 seconds at 5.9. So let's take a look at how this combination drives. So muscle cars are brute cars, right? They're not very comfortable to drive. Not exactly. Let's take a look at how Dodge's reincarnation drives, shall we? Now, that exhaust, I will point out, is not the stock exhaust. This is an aftermarket Corsa exhaust that the previous owner put on, and it sounds fantastic. Now, that's the low tire pressure beating at me, not the low gas. Now, driving the Challenger is quite a different feel from driving a Camaro or a Mustang. For one, you can actually see out of this car, unlike a Camaro. The visibility is even better than a Mustang. The vehicle feels massive. This is definitely the most boulevard cruiser of the 3 muscle car choices that you can pick today. And the size of it, it's definitely not my taste, but some people might be looking for that in their muscle car. See, Chrysler's 5.7 Hemi is a torque monster. I barely have to, get the revs up, and this thing's just got unbelievable mid-range pull. It definitely has a different character from Ford's 5-liter V8 and Chevy's 6.2-liter V8 in the Camaro. Now, when you are driving the car normally, the 5-speed auto has some pretty crisp shifts. It's definitely a little bit antiquated in today's market, just because it's down, you know, a gear or two from the competition. But the one thing about the Challenger, like I'm going to stress again, is the ride comfort. This thing is one of the most comfortable riding muscle cars I've ever driven. The Mustang is definitely too harsh for my taste for everyday use, while the Camaro, it's kind of that a little bit better, but this is definitely the best for a long highway trip. It's also got the most space. I mean, you could stretch about in here, and you have plenty of room to, you know, rummage about in this vehicle. It's also somewhat on the quieter side when you're not, you know, dipping into the throttle like this. But you can see the acceleration is just incredible. I would love to test drive this car with the 6.1 liter V8 or the 6.4. Of course, this car is not my taste. I look rather funny driving it, but you know, I can see why there is an appeal for this type. I mean, this car does not handle as well as a Mustang or a Genesis Coupe or even a Camaro does. This car just feels very boat-like. The steering is very numb. It doesn't give you much confidence, and it just feels like you're piloting a really big, heavy car. Now, back in 2010 when this car was new, you definitely need to go for the V8 model. The V6 models back then were the 3.5 V6, 250 horsepower, and they had a 5-speed auto. Back in 2009, they were a 4-speed auto. But definitely go with the V8 because at 1625 mpg, you actually don't lose that much compared to the V6, which is at 1725. Of course, in 2011, when Chrysler replaced the horrible 3.5 with a 3.6 with 305 horsepower, they did make the V6 option a little bit more appealing. But if you're going to go for one that's before 2011, go with the 5.7 Hemi. It's definitely worth the upgrade. But in terms of, you know, just drivability, this car offers, you know, compared to the other two, or even the Genesis Coupe, like luxury car levels of refinement. This is essentially the kind of car that you could technically keep and then, you know, put some kids in the back seat. You just can't do that in a Mustang or a Camaro. So props to Dodge for doing that, for going this way, because it definitely helps the vehicle be a little bit more appealing to, you know, a family guy. Now these 20-inch wheels are rather large, and it does cut into the turning radius a little bit. But as you can see, you barely have to push this engine, it just goes. That is fast. I must admit, I do actually like this car when the engine gets up there. But anyways, if you guys are in the market for a muscle car, I mean, you got the three choices. They're American, the Camaro, the Mustang, the Challenger. If your emphasis is more comfort and space, definitely take this vehicle out for a test drive. But make sure you go for the V8 if you're going for a pre-2011. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all later.